People, you know, just be proud of yourself because we are making some serious progress. So please support the senators that are listed, you know, on this form back here. Just call them. It doesn't matter if they're in your district. It doesn't matter. You know, just don't worry about that. You know, forget the lines. You know, just support the ones that are really helping our the conservative, constitutional conservative cause. Also, I wanted to give you a quick, what's another thing? Okay. Well, that was pretty much it. So, anyway, I'm excited about our speaker tonight. She came a long way to come visit us. Anyway, Miss Mack is an award-winning educator, author, consultant, publisher, and CSCOPE Researcher. She is also the founder and director of Horizons Academy in San Angelo, Texas, and CEO of Math in Ballinger, Texas. That's correct. Ms. Mack will be presenting the most up-to-date information about what is being taught in our public schools via CSCOPE. And just, I'm not going to even do anything to steal her thunder because she is the expert. She knows what's going on, and I just cannot wait to hear what she has to say. And let's all just give her a big welcome.
Does everyone buy handouts?
They're at the table. Pass them out.
Yes, if you don't mind. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate everyone coming, especially those that have to stand for a long period of time. At the back. Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for doing that, because I tend to walk off and wonder. I will tell you, number one, that I'm not here because I'm making a lot of money. I'm not doing that at all, even though they are paying a little bit of my travel expenses. I've been accused of being a right-wing something or other crazy, but once you define that, let me know and tell me if you're in the same group. I don't know about that. So I'm hearing a lot of different things. I truly will tell you that I'm not here out of choice. I did not decide to do this. In fact, when it first crossed my path several years back and I researched this and I tried to take it to Austin and try to have somebody else look into this, no one had heard about it. There was not any feedback coming back to it. In fact, the teachers at one conference that I gave a presentation asked me to do the research. My background comes in the fact that I was a pre-med major in biology and chemistry and went to Texas Tech Medical School, but instead of going to the medical school, I did research for them. I got my teaching certification on the side because I wanted one of those high-paying jobs, you know, in case to fall back on. And I'm certified pre-K through 12 with special ed and gifted endorsements in doing that. Instead of doing the doctor thing, which from the age 4 on, I wanted to be a pediatrician and work with children. God opened this door as He closed one on me, that I would do research with children in learning. So what I learned in research on the brain through the medical school, I brought into the field of education. And then after so many years in that school in San Angelo, I said, okay, this will work. And I had those God moments when I would drive to work, when I knew exactly what to do. And I was excited about it because the kids in my school were finishing up 6th grade in math. And I had a lot of learning disabled children. They were finishing up at the end of 2nd grade, 4 years ahead of schedule. They were topping out in the top 1% of the nation in standardized tests. God has given us this incredible brain, which we use just a small portion of. And so that's what was revealed to me. I was excited with the results. I took it on the road. And then I crossed the path of CSCOPE at one conference where teachers were saying, Ms. Mack, you did research, please look into this. I said, oh, sure, I'll do that. And when I did, then I discovered some things, and then, like I said, tried to take it to Austin. No one was interested in finding out about it. I put it on the shelf, and then about a year ago, I pulled it back down again because somebody had called me and asked me about some things. And then one thing led to another, and then I got a call, and they said, please do us a report. I said, okay. I love research, so I'll do that. So for about 2 weeks, after interviewing hundreds of people and reading every dissertation, every article that was out there on this, looking at every possible angle, taking data, putting it together. Then the report went to Austin, and it ended up with the state board, and it ended up in the governor's office and the commissioner's office. I said, great, my job is done. Now I'll get back to what you love to do. Then I get a call, you need to come and testify before the state board. I said, okay, I'll do that. So I did that. I said, great, my job is done. And then I got a call to come and testify before the Senate committee, and I did that. I said, oh, great, my job is done. And then now I think this is the number 12 or the 13th group of Tea Partiers that I've spoken to in the last month. So, why? Because I'm spitting in it? Sorry about that. Now, can you hear me? Is this one? No? The other one's better. Can you hear me now? Oh, that's right. You turn on the on button. Right. Thank you. Thank you. There we go. Okay. So here I am today. And I want to tell you something. Let me see if I can get this to go through it. My objective is not to convince you one way or the other to do anything. I truly believe in local control. I believe if this town, if the towns around here want CSCOPE, I think it's the business of the local people to make that decision. The thing I feel is very, very important is that you make that decision with being well informed. That's very important to me. So what I'm asking schools and anybody in the audience that has any pull with schools, please do not renew this until you have looked into it thoroughly and you have been well informed, and your teachers and your parents and your students are well informed about what it's about. So I want to empower you to take effective action, but being informed, again, at the local level in doing that. That's me with a bunch of my kids in San Angelo. Okay. I was doing recess duty and sitting on the side bench of a picnic bench out on the playground. There were 3 little girls sitting on the tabletop behind me, and quite a few kids out there playing. And when they're sitting behind you and right there beside you, you don't have to worry about them. And they said, Miss Mack, we would like to give you a do. And I said, okay, go ahead. My hair looks funny anyway most of the time at the end of the day teaching kids. So they got their little barrettes and they were putting my hair up and they were doing all this sorts of stuff. And at least they were busy, out of trouble, and everything was happy. Then all of a sudden, quiet. Are there any teachers in the audience? Anytime the kids get quiet, what does that mean? So I sat there, okay, now do I turn around or do I wait? And while I was trying to make that decision, here came Sarah. Sarah came around this side, and if you've ever had a little 5-year-old, they get right up in your face when they're talking to you, and generally sneeze before they talk to you, but they get up in your face, and she said, Miss Mack. I said, yes, Sarah. She said, Miss Mack, there's some gray hairs up here. So I said, okay, it's Friday, I'll go for this. I said, Sarah, I've come to your beauty shop, and I've got to go out tonight, and I've got to do lots of things, and you're pointing out my gray hair, and you can't do anything about it. Surely you can do something about it. Then I hit myself in the head thinking, oh no, here comes the magic markers. Set myself up with that. And then as I was trying to think of something to say, the kids got really quiet, because they had awakened the dragon of the disgruntled customer. And then here she came again, and she put her arm around me, and she came around the side, nose to nose, and she said, Miss Mack, I love your gray hairs, and I love your mustache too. So children are often blatantly truthful. So and I will get your attention, because if you're not listening to my words, you'll watch the top part of my lip here to see if you can see. Anyway, okay. CSCOPE people I found are blatantly untruthful. And I'm sorry to say that, but I will cross that line, because I was taught in school that you can tell an out and out lie by saying something false, but you can also lie through omission. And you will find out what I mean from this. From the beginning to the end, the common denominator. Now remember, I have a background in research. So I'm going to list every possible variable in uncovering CSCOPE. Interviewing people, I would list what they were telling me, and I'd put it into categories. And when you do research, you then align those categories in what are called degrees of influence. And I was trying to find, what is my first degree of influence in this program? What has the most energy or pull or push to get it where it was? So from the beginning to the end, the common denominators are the superintendents. From beginning to end, the superintendents are involved in their connection with TASA, their organization, in doing this. And also, the second part is Linda Darling Hammond with Obama's Common Core. That I found every which way I turned around and looked into it. Now, the reason these two things are important is the fact that, remember, I'm trying to stay very objective in collecting this information. And every time I turn around, either one of the two of those things would come up. And the reason I have this one up now is because I couldn't understand certain occurrences. This just doesn't make sense. This just doesn't make sense. It's not. Now, I also have won an award in business, so I had a little bit of business sense. And if you have a product out there that you're selling or a service that you're giving, there generally is steps to get the best product out there to your customer or customer service that you're doing. And so I was not finding this to be in place with CSCOPE. They recently changed their bylaws. And if you know anything about incorporations and your bylaws, to change your bylaws, you have to go through the legal ramifications of doing that. And the only change that they had lately was that they added the fact that they could sell this to the federal government. Okay. So why would you do that unless that was one of your intents? Okay. So as looking, in dealing with business, when I deal business with people, the first thing I find out is where their value system is coming from. Are you a reputable person? What do you value in providing your product or your service? What kind of person are you? So, okay, let's look at CSCOPE. If I'm going to look at a program, then let me see their mission statement. Let me see who's behind it. Let me see where the value system of this comes from. In their training material from the very beginning, and in a lot of Q&As that are out there in a lot of schools, you will see this slide on CSCOPE. There are 12 of them listed here. When I gave my report to the state board in testimony, I had taken 3 of them and extensively looked into them. One of them was Linda Darling Hammond, and one was Lev Vygotsky, and one was Fenwick English, one from each section up there. Okay. Let me tell you about Linda. Do y'all know about Linda Darling Hammond? Some have already mentioned that to you. She was Obama's advisor in 2008 when he first ran. She was supposed to be, I understand by one article, his Secretary of Education. And then the article said she was too radical for him, which I was wondering what that meant. And then she comes from Stanford. There's a wonderful article on her in Stanford University done by Joel, I think his last name is Williams, from Brenham, the Brenham Banner. He did a 3-part series on CSCOPE that you need to read. Because he also, and I talked to him in length to compare our notes, because I tried connecting with all of these people in one way or the other. He did the same thing, and our notes did not line up on a couple of them. But anyway, he did a more intensive review on her with Stanford University. She had her school out there under the same methodology of which CSCOPE is based on. Her school went under. They would not renew her charter school licensing because the kids were having such a poor job. And then Stanford University even analyzed that. So reading his article about that, and now she's the expert on it. She failed, now she's the expert, and guess where the superintendents are going to go to for their national convention? To listen to, you got it. Okay, Lev Vygotsky, he's a dead Russian. He's also a Marxist, an atheist, a behavioral scientist in it, but most educators have been given his theory on what's called proximal development. And so a lot of educators will say he has this wonderful way of which kids learn and whatever. I just say, what the heck, he's Marxist in doing it. So presenting his philosophy out there, I will always have an educator argue with on his point. Fenwick English has written an article, The 10 Worst Enemies of Education. He has pulled down every conservative educator that's out there. So you can pull his name up and read that article as well. All of them together, either in certain degrees, are connected to what's called progressive education. Progressive education being that liberal slant. Now, if y'all have the handouts that I have, are there any that are floating around? The second page of it will show you the difference between traditional and also progressive, so that you have that available for you. Okay. There's 7 areas of concern, and this should be on the first handout. I don't see many handouts, so. I tell you what, if you have any piece of paper from a napkin or whatever, if you'll give me your email address before you leave here, I will email those two to you, okay? So if you didn't get a copy of those two, if you'll just leave me an email address, I will send them to you. There's 7 areas of concern. Now, you remember that in doing research, I was collecting this information, and it was so overwhelming from a lot of different people. And then as I was trying to plug them into categories, these are the 7 areas. The latest one that I added is hurting students, the last one, of which we are hearing very little about and which concerns me the most. The ideology that we have there is talking about social constructivism. It's based on that. The influence of socialism and Marxism on from the research aspect of it. The one that surprises everybody is the covertness, because I just had the question, how in the heck could this have been going on since 2006 to this time without anybody knowing about it? Now, CSCOPE people will tell you that's because it's just been doing a great job all this time, and there's really any reason for concern on it. There are a lot of reasons for the covertness, and I'll show you that in a minute. The legal structure of it, the finances, and the illegal actions involved, the quality and the substance of the material, the misrepresentation, the inefficiency, and of course the hurting the students. Have y'all seen the Lumberton ISD thing on the burqa? Okay. When you have something that's high emotional level like that, then the masses get upset about it because it plays against your basic belief system. Okay. Then everybody is all rounded up. Let's get out there and find out what CSCOPE is about. If you don't have that kind of stuff out there to rally the forces together, then generally, unless that wolf is at your door, we normally don't take any action whatsoever. We know that it's on the other side of town, that's fine, but as long as it's not up at our door, we're not going to do anything. But when we see it on the news, then we're all interested in it. And of course, this will fade out again. The structure. Who owns CSCOPE? And this one, I think Senator Campbell at the Senate Education Committee asked the question over and she said, no, let me get this right. CSCOPE was developed with taxpayer paid employees in the region centers and with taxpayer money on taxpayer time. And then the directors of the region centers decided, well, we'll just take the product and then we'll come over here and we will form an organization called TESCCC, and then we will own CSCOPE, and then we will license it back to ourselves, so then we can then license it back to the schools, which will pay for CSCOPE again. She said, now let me get this right. We pay for it to begin with, and then we pay it again, and then we pay it one more time to get it back, whatever. And basically that's it. I'm doing it. So, out of the 20 region centers that we have in the state of Texas that accommodate the needs of local schools, 19 of the directors formed together their organization, TESCCC, and they basically control the product of which was developed on your tax dollar money. Okay. How did the money flow in it? It's quite confusing. That part of it we are now looking into. Now, we don't know, basically, because we have been trying to get the information out to have audits on the financial aspect of it to find out where the money is coming and going. It's not chump change here, because when you look at it, just the estimates that you had is either 30 to 50 million a year minimum that was coming in. Now remember, you're not buying a concrete item that I have to republish over and over and have printer costs or delivery costs. You are buying access to a computerized program, which at the end of the year you no longer have access to, so you have to renew that licensing the very next year. Now, the reason I'm showing this to you is because, do you see the blue kind of square up there with NER in it? Okay, that's to remind you, to tell you that from 2006 until last summer, they had we really don't know if there was a contract with it. NER is National Education Resources Incorporated. They were the ones that set up the computerized framework for this, okay? And when I was sitting at the
the state board meeting, and almost everybody had left that night. It's like 8 o'clock at night, and then CSCOPE people were giving their financial report. Everybody had left, and all the emotional stuff was gone. And I was sitting there, and Ms. Poplin, who's the director for Region 9 out of Wichita Falls, mentioned, and then we get kickbacks from the computer company. And then boom, my hit went up, and I said, okay, NER. And so NER was getting kickbacks somewhere after they said they didn't receive money, and I was getting more confused out of it. So we looked into NER, had a lawyer look into it for New York. And, oh, by the way, Lillian. Yes. Everybody clap for her. She graduates from EMT in 2 months. It is operated by a single individual in a house in rural New York. So no other schools, there's no website, no anything. So the company that had your program for the state of Texas up so many schools was run by that one individual doing it. They now have changed to another company. Okay. CSCOPE is not a management system. It is a control system. It controls teachers, it controls students' thoughts, it controls the truth, it controls the amount of parental public influence. Remember, it was never designed for efficiency, accuracy, or integrity. And the reason I know this is because up until a certain time, I was an objective researcher who was just given the documents. Remember the report that went in? It didn't have my name on it. All it was were copies of documentation, so that the individual who read it at the other end at the state level could come up to their own conclusion. And then after a while realized that basically you cannot come up with a conclusion unless you have that full perspective of this, because it's so integrated, it's very scary. The reason I did Temple ISD. Remember I gave the presentation and had the teachers ask me to look into it. The real interaction with CSCOPE, the first time I really came across what it does, was at Temple ISD. A principal had hired me to do accelerated learning with kids. And so my contract was signed, and between the time my contract was signed and the time that I got to the school, a new superintendent had come in. And the new superintendent that came in brought in CSCOPE. So they had to still have me do my services, even though it was in conflict with CSCOPE. So the first 2 days of school, I sat down with 2 bilingual groups of kindergarten students, showing them how to use the brain, and within 30 minutes we showed them how to memorize addition and subtraction facts, so that at the highest level. And we had about 11 of them within 30 minutes, which they could not forget. That's my research. It was fun. We did it. We counted up to 20 in Spanish and down, and we counted up to 20 in English. So these at-risk kids and I had a lot of fun. We did what we were supposed to do. I came back in 3 weeks, and 4 weeks, and for a follow-up part of my contract to come back up, and I said, okay, teachers, tell me. Have you just stuck with the 11 that we did? Have you added more to it? What are the kids doing? Are they writing in their journals? Have they forgotten anything? Or have you gone on and so forth? I was excited to have feedback because these kids had that capability. And by the way, Hispanics have a natural affinity for the patterning in mathematics. They actually should be our highest mathematicians, but they're not, simply because of the way we teach it. But anyway, I came back in 4 weeks. And I said, okay, tell me what math facts you're on and how great the kids are doing. Now remember, addition and subtraction is generally taught in 1st grade, and this was a group of kindergarten students. And they said, we're on the number 4. And I said, what? And they said, we're on the number 4. I said, but we just learned 11 addition subtraction problems 4 weeks ago. And what do you mean you're on the number 4? Well, CSCOPE has it that we take 23 weeks to teach kids to count to 20. And we were on the number 4. So, when I walked out of the school, I said, something is wrong somewhere. That was one of my big flags. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the methodology. Out of the handout that you had, there's 2 columns there. One of them to the left is called the traditional approach, or type 1. And then the one on the right side is called CSCOPE, or social constructivism. It's a liberal, left, socialist approach to teaching or learning. Okay. I was lucky enough to be old enough to have that traditional approach from all the way from kindergarten on up through college, basically, where you had vetted experts who told you what you needed to do with well-defined expectations, and then productivity, and then merit. All of that was in there. I either was productive and accurate or was not, and it was easy to meet that or to at least to adjust to it. Okay, progressive education on the right side, of which CSCOPE is based upon, looks at it as a social element first. It is not one on merit or productivity. It is a rating on how you interact socially. Example. A teacher has a topic in the classroom. Let's say photosynthesis. Kids are put into groups, and most of the activities in CSCOPEs are put into a group activity. So you have a group here. The teacher is not to teach or give the information out, but to let the kids do what's called an inquiry discovery. That happens to be my son. And you throw it on the table, and then you start with what's called a higher thinking skill. They have to evaluate first before they learn any of the facts. Okay? Now, can you see how this is done? You have to evaluate before you learn any of the facts, but you discover the facts through inquiry and discovery. With teachers that are in the room and maybe other people who have ever taught a group of people, when you have a group of people, let's say 4 or 5, and you give them a task to do, who does the work? Usually the leader or the kid that really wants a good grade or whatever. Then what are the other kids doing? We're waiting around to get it done, then we'll get on the answer, and then we will share the grade. And that's part of it. Now, to give you an example of this, Dr. Stovall, who came up from Beaumont, is a dentist. And he brought some information. He has now pulled his 3 kids out of CSCOPE school. And he was telling me, and a dentist, tell me how many years you have to do to be a dentist. You have your 4 collegiate years, and then how many more years? 4 more? 6 more, something? Okay. 4 more, thank you. Okay. So he has his daughter, fourth grade daughter, come home, and she has a math paper which he is not really sure what the steps are that they want because there's no textbook. And by the way, progressives generally will downplay the use of textbooks or what's called a reference, an anchored reference, because anything goes. And it's a good Philly type thing. Anyway, he didn't know what to do. So he goes to school and he says, my daughter's doing this and I'm not too sure exactly what steps you want or what I need to be showing her to do to make sure because she cannot explain it to me. Can I please have a textbook? And she said, oh no, we don't use textbooks. And he said, but I have to have an example to show her what to do. Well, the lady got up, the curriculum director of the school, and he said, oh great. So she leaves the room. And he said, well, I won my argument, I guess, because she's going to go and get a textbook and bring it back, and I will be able to help my daughter. She comes back into the room, and instead of having a textbook, she hands him 2 pamphlets for him to go to a local junior college to take a remedial math course to help his daughter with math. Then the next week, she brings home a paper in which she has circled the wrong answer, and he says, honey, he says, I know you know this answer. And she said, oh yes, Dad. Yeah, here's the right answer right here. And she said, well, why did you circle the wrong answer? And she said, that's because in our group, we're supposed to come up with a group answer, and that's the one we have to mark. So we share the grade and do it. Okay. That's what social constructivism is, the fact that you have the social element. I think that the day that I really decided to step across the line and to fight this instead of being neutral anymore is when I sat down with a mother. And this mother is a very intelligent, strong woman, and yet she was in tears, and she was showing me the paper that her child brought home, and he had been in tears, the fact that it was his evaluation from social constructivism, that he's a shy child. And in this particular approach, they have checklists. So the teacher goes around, throws out photosynthesis, tells them what to do, and then she checks to watch to see how many questions the kids ask each other. So that's what they're graded on, is the social interaction. Well, if you have a shy child, what happens? Very little action. So he had no he didn't have any high marks on his grade. Smart kid, but he had been getting failing grades. and there was nothing, he didn't know why. And then they had him graph his bad grades with 5 questions underneath it, and one of them was, what do you think you need to do to improve your grades? Well, the kid didn't know to begin with what he was expected of him. So this again is that social constructivism of keeping score on your social interactions and doing it. Oh, by the way, they do that with the teachers too when they do what's called a 3-minute walkthrough. Okay. If you have a child in public school with CSCOPE, did you know that because of CSCOPE, your child wastes approximately 1 out of every 5 days, 2 cumulative months a year testing? Under the oppression of CSCOPE, teachers are subjected to as many as 3 unannounced walkthroughs a week, which administrators call best practices that lowers teachers' morale and interrupts the flow of instruction. Remember when I told you that how this happened for so long and no one knew about it? Okay, this is, and I'll show you in just a minute, but one of them is the 3-minute walkthrough. They had these teachers, and then they knew right off the bat the veteran teachers would give them heck. So they had training from the very beginning, in which I'll show you a slide, on how to minimize those nasty veteran teachers who don't do anything but just sit back. And so they had to keep the teachers quiet, and they did that with their user agreement, which gave them criminal action if they discussed this with anyone. And then if those teachers dared to do something outside of what the CSCOPE lesson was, we'd catch them with a 3-minute walkthrough. And this is where Fenwick English comes in. This is one of his babies. And they had their iPads, and they walk into the classroom. Mary, one of the teachers, told me that she looked up, she had 6 observers in the back with iPads. They come in her classroom often and take pictures of what's hanging on the walls in there so that they can use the intimidation factor on it. I think at the Senate hearing committee, I'm not too sure, but I think it was Grand Prairie Superintendent who was pro-CSCOPE, said that they love their 3-minute walkthroughs. They do 3 of them a week. Now think about this. You're in your classroom with little bitty kids, and you have 3 walkthroughs unexpected. Have you been a guest in a room when somebody comes in that's an unexpected person? What happens to have kids? Not very distracted in doing it. And it was a large school district. She said we have 1,700 teachers, and we do 3 a week. Do the math on that. What is it? 100 walkthroughs a week or whatever. And doing it. I want to know who keeps the paperwork on that. Anyway, the teachers are intimidated with that. Now, not all of your best teachers quit over this. Some of them are pretty darn sneaky, and they knew this too. But one of them is my niece. And she, after a while, realized that you can't beat the system out front, so she had to do it behind. But they had a system where they knew the 3-minute walkthrough person was coming down the hall. So she's teaching the regular way to get the kids to know the facts and do whatever that she's been taught to do. And by the way, they give her honors because her test scores are always the highest for that grade. Anyway, but they don't want her doing it that way. Anyway, when they hear them coming down the hall, then they okay, everybody, hi, put the books up. You know, just think about that. You're teaching the kids to do what? Be deceitful in doing that, so that you can then do the 3-minute walkthrough. Okay, because CSCOPE, teachers are abandoning high-quality lessons for time-wasting, cut-and-paste activities that dumb down the education value of the lesson. At that Senate committee hearing, Mary was beside me, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was on sedimentary rocks, and she read this out to the committee, and she said, here's one of your lessons. We are studying sedimentary rock in the state of Texas. And instead of going outside and picking up a rock, which most of Texas is made of, she said, we have to take ramen noodles and rub them together so that they can see what would happen if you rubbed 2 sedimentary rocks together. Dumbing down. Due to error-laden assessments which do not match lessons in CSCOPE, students are routinely left feeling like failures. Remember the little boy I told you that was crying because he was making the low grades and doing 2 things here. How's that happening? I couldn't figure it out for the longest time until more and more teachers would give me lessons. And by the way, I did not have access to their code that they had in it because I've been accused of doing that. In fact, I had a teacher offered me her code, and I said, no, I won't do that. I won't put you in harm's way. But I've seen enough of the lessons that have been sent to me. They have violated their user agreement. I did not violate it for them. And they are required to follow what's called the scope and sequence when things are taught. Today we're going to learn 2 plus 2 is 4, okay? And we're going to do this for 3 days. And then after that we're going to do 3 plus 3 is 6 and so forth and so on. So there's a scope and sequence when things are taught. Everybody is on the same lesson across the state of Texas at the same time, okay? And in doing this, the teacher has to teach that lesson because remember the 3-minute walkthrough, and they're monitoring the computers at the same time. In doing this, then what happens is on Friday they're given a CSCOPE test. Now, the reason they sold this to so many schools is under the fear factor of the fact that in big nasty STAR test is coming up, the assessment test. And superintendents want that silver bullet, they want that golden ring so that they can get that rating up. And you can't begrudge them for that. But they are told that the teachers, in some schools, teachers have flexibility, but you have to stick with the scope and sequence, and you have to stick with assessment. Well, the assessments were written by a different group of people who wrote the lessons. Okay, you getting this? The teacher has to follow the lesson here on photosynthesis. And then on Friday, when the test is given out, there may be stuff on it about photosynthesis, but there may be 1 or 2 questions on mitosis, of which the student has not had any information. So these kids are failing these tests left and right, and the average, and I just got more information yesterday of one little girl who makes the highest grade, and her grade is 60. The average for the class is about 40. And I'm seeing this completely across the state of Texas, that they are failing these CSCOPE tests left and right. Now, you say, well, would the superintendent get upset about that? That all of these tests are failing? I mean, I would be. If I was superintendent, I'd get up out of my chair and I'd get down that hall and find out what in the heck's going on. Either the material's bad, or the teachers are bad, or the kids are acting up. There's got to be an explanation to this for it to be so bad. Why aren't they upset about it? Well, I went to a school board meeting of which they brought in a ringer to counteract these complaining parents. And one parent, I won't forget her, stood up. She said, I have a gifted and talented daughter. She does not want to come to school anymore because she's no longer making A's, she's making 70s. And here the ringer steps up, and he's the expert on learning at this high rigor amount, and he says, and this explains it to me, but you won't believe it. He says, you know who complains the most about CSCOPE are those A students, because they're no longer making A's. They're no longer just regurgitating facts, we're actually making them use rigor and making them think at a higher level, okay? In doing that, when these kids make low grades on these tests, superintendents are telling people that it's working. The system is working when the failing grades are in there because that's proof that what? That they are now having to think up here at a rigorous level, and the poor test grades of A students who used to make 100 are now making 70. 70s are now the new 100. Well, I said this on a radio program in West Texas the other day, and I was waiting for the call-ins to call me crazy. When I said this, I said, y'all won't believe this when superintendents say that the poor grades are indication that it's actually working. And waiting, and sure enough, the first 2 callers are called and said, Miss Mack, that's exactly what our superintendent just told us. So, does that not bother you? Okay. I publish books for children on accelerated learning so that they learn things outside of the box. In other words, they think they're smart, they can learn it faster, easier, at a higher level. Again, it's exciting for me. So when I look at reading material, I know right off the bat is this 1st grade stuff, 2nd grade stuff, 11th grade stuff. By looking at it, I can pretty well tell what the reading level is. But we don't do that professionally. We use systems to determine whether or not this book that we published is a 4th grade reader and would be sold to 4th grade students, or at that reading level. And it's called, there's a Fry's readability test, and there's a Flesch-Kincaid readability test. So you do this for me and you figure out what level your product's going to be sold at, okay? So, this is the, given to me again by a teacher for this year, English Language Arts. This is a test, and this is the piece of material that they had to read. Now, what grade was that? Did y'all catch that? 4th grade. Okay, so I did a readability test on it. Here we did Flesch-Kincaid all the way down. The grade level that material is 6th grade level. 2 years above what the child should be reading it. Okay, so I said, okay, let's say that's just a fluke. So I did another one, 5th grade reading test, same year, 2008. 2012-13. Here's the material, and by the way, it comes from MSNBC material. There you go. And I knew that'd get a run out of you. And so I did a readability test on you. Now remember, the last one was 4th grade, and what was the actual reading level? Was 6th grade. This is 5th grade. Reading level is 9th, halfway through 9th grade. Now, when I showed this to somebody who, yes ma'am?
I'm sorry, I thought CSCOPE was 6th through 12th grade.
No, K through 12.
Okay, sorry.
K through 12.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
That's okay. Reading level here is the 9th grade. So they say, why the heck would they have material that's above the level? Why would they give tests out to kids on material that they have not been taught in doing it? Is it just pure bad business planning, or is there an intention here? And see, I'm swinging back and forth every time. I say, surely this cannot be done on purpose. And then I say, well, it has to be. That's the only way I can explain. No, it can't. Surely this can't be done on purpose. And the next thing is, yeah, it has to be. There's no other explanation. CSCOPE pushes an educational philosophy that makes teachers abandon direct instruction and leaves out geography, vocabulary, development, cursive, spelling, grammar, systemic reading instruction, memorization of multiplication facts, and the skill practice needed for students to gain confidence. At that State Board of Education meeting, I was the number 3 speaker. And then, I don't know, there were like 20 some odd. And right in the middle of it, they took a break. So I'd already been up there and I was talking about math and accelerated learning. And let's get out there and do that instead of arguing over this stuff. And so I was sitting there, and people were mulling around and doing whatever during the break, and then all of a sudden somebody tapped me on the back shoulder, and I turned around, and it was this young teacher. And she said, Miss Meg, she said, you were talking about math facts and how fast the kids can learn this. She said, I need your help. And I said, sure, honey, tell me what's your name, what school you're from. She said, please, I don't want to tell you. Do I have to tell you who I am and where I'm from? I said, no, you don't have to. And because her superintendent was in the room, I said, well, honey, you're going to get shot just by talking to me. But anyway, she said, I need help. And I said, okay, I've got products, but I can tell you what my competitors' products are, or I can show you even how to make your own with your kids so that they can learn how to do it. Tell me where we can do this. Do you have circle time with your kids? No, we're not allowed to do that. Okay, right before going home, do you have warm-up, wrap-up time or whatever? No, we're not allowed to do that. Can we get the kids homework so that they can do what's called 60-second homework that will put it into long-term? No, we're not allowed to do that. I said, well, can we hang it on? No, we're not allowed to do that. Every alternative to teach these kids, it's a 5th grade teacher, they do not know their basic math facts, and she's desperate. But everything suggested to her, they were not allowed to do that. The only thing we could figure out is that they put an entry into one of their journals, and that was it. So every time she brings up something, I want to buy this, I want to do this, I want to try this, these kids do not know their math fact, she would tell, you're not a game player. Okay. CSCOPE philosophy constantly puts students into learning groups where young children are expected to teach each other, and teachers are told in the script, this is in their script, on some of it, of course, not all of it, but any answer is accepted. Okay? So what you've got, that's the difference between traditional. Traditional is that you go to the experts to find out what you need to know, what path you need to do, what skills you need to develop, and here are the steps to do it. In CSCOPE material, you have the children determine what is the most important thing. They teach each other. Now, there are 2 articles out there. One that it hurts minorities and poor the most, because they come to the table generally. Let me explain this a little bit different. Your top 25% in any school and anywhere in the nation, top 25% kids bring information to the school. They read outside of school, they experience things out of school, and they bring information to the table. Okay? Your bottom 25% very rarely do that. They only depend on what they get at school, and that's it. So that's the difference between those 2 extremes. So when you put them into a group here, they're saying that the bottom 25% do not, they suffer the most because they do not have enough knowledge to come to that evaluation. Remember, they had to evaluate first? Okay, that's their problem. But think about the bright kid, and this is how I was pulled into CSCOPE, because I had gifted and talented teachers tell me that their gifted kids and their advanced kids were suffering. Because if she's my gifted student in my group, and the only thing taught and exchanged is what is brought to the table, she's the one that's the expert, but she's not given any additional information which she can draw on. So the gifted and talented child is not. But then that's what you call education equity. And that's what you will find in the works of the experts. They're equal. Examples of indoctrination. This is what gets everybody riled up. Y'all know who Ginger Russell is? Redhead from Texas. I've seen that woman with a gun in her hand. Okay. Examples of indoctrination. This gets everybody riled up because, again, this is a personal, emotional buy-in or beliefs. When you step on my toes, my beliefs, then I'm going to start fighting you on it. So, when you look at things, and I will tell you this, Pearson, who sells the STAR test and the TAKS test and the TOS test in the state of Texas, is out of the UK. They cannot sell a product that's going to step on somebody's toes somewhere along there. So they have editing and they go through a lot of vetting stuff to get it out there. Otherwise, they couldn't sell their product back to a state in doing that. But in CSCOPE tests, which are made by CSCOPE people, in doing this, you can generally get away with anything because no one is looking at the test. Now, Patrick made an agreement now here with TSCCC that we'll have an overview of this, and Barbara Carville said, yes, that we'll do this, we'll look at these lessons, but then something was said, but we won't look at the test. Well, if you don't look at the test, that's where some of the indoctrination is actually occurring. Examples being, y'all saw this one, didn't you, with, I think Lou Beck had this one first? Yeah. Okay. So you have this news report out here, and they read it first, and then she defines that what they're reading is actually the Boston Tea Party. That got everybody upset, referring to them as terrorists, okay? This one was with Ginger and her mother. Ginger, I think, discovered this one. And Ginger and her mother went into a meeting with about 5 CSCOPE people, and this was early on when they were first discovering stuff, and they said, do you know that there's a lot of pro-Islamic stuff in it? And I will tell you that every one of these veteran teachers that got together to pull all this stuff together to bring to the state board and to the Senate committee were just random people who were out to help children who ran into CSCOPE accidentally. That's it. No one set out to pull them under. In fact, the first response is, let me help you. Let me show you. And I think Janice Van Cleave, that was her first thing when she saw a science lesson. She said, there's errors in here. Let me show you what the errors should be corrected. And then they wouldn't let her look at any more of the lessons. Then they accused her then of trying to steal their product, of doing it. And anyway, Ginger's saying, okay, do you realize that there's an Islamic lesson there? And I think it was Wade Labai, the director of CSCOPE, said, oh, no, there's not. And they argued about it. And there were several witnesses to this. No, there's not. Yes, there is. No, there's not. And so Ginger reaches over and says, bring it up. So he brought up the CSCOPE thing. She said, hit that button, hit that button. And then this came up. This was the PowerPoint that was there. Even he did not know that it was there in it. And then they are taught to memorize quotes from the Quran in doing this. So, disturbing. Okay. Do 5th graders have enough basic knowledge about tyrannical oppression and war to understand fully this question? Now, you have to realize that this occurred before the violence that we had as far in the debate we have now with gun control. Okay, this has been in place for a long time. 5th graders, think about 5th graders right now. Preteens, stinky shoes, hormones, not listening to anybody, know everything, but don't know anything, that kind of stuff. Okay. Then they're given this question here on their test is to find out what are 2 opposing views to the Second Amendment. Not what are 2 positive views of the Second Amendment, but what are 2 opposing views of the Second Amendment. And so you have subtle things like that. The brain is really interesting in the fact that you can control the thought process. We don't like her because, and then she's got a green sweater, she's a blonde, whatever. But the thing is, we don't like her is the statement that you have indoctrinated the individual with. So, sorry, I was speaking on you. Okay. We have a situation here, and this is with the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and then it was number 9. Which one applies to number 9, where the police suspect Paul Revere of hiding an illegal substance in his home? Okay. Can you think of a better example? Does this imply that Paul Revere, a beloved American figure, was hiding drugs in his home? So just subtlety of things like that that really do not make, again. Finally, I just decided. either they're complete idiots or this is totally contrived. And then I keep going back, no, they've got to be complete idiots, and then no, this has got to be contrived. Okay, this is the one. We have any Catholics in the room? This is a pie graph of religions in South America, because this is a Latin America unit, okay? Remember the Spanish came over and settled in South America, okay. And so you have, naturally you would have Catholicism in the majority in South America. So you have that pie graph and you can see Roman Catholic 87%. Can you see that? Okay, then the question down there has to do with, when you have this occur, what happens? Okay. What happens when you have Roman Catholics in large numbers? And then the one that says all of these, it says that, I'm reading this, social climbers such as arguments, social clashes such as arguments and violence between religious groups happen. So they're indicating that there will be a dominance and violence occurring simply because of that. And then the question has to do with what are the negative results of having so many Catholics in one place. I think they have a lot of babies. Okay, anyway, going from capitalism to communism. Now this is not a really bad thing, even though I've seen this on several blogs and websites now, people writing an article. You've got capitalism at the bottom, socialism and communism, and you've got tenets of it, you know, okay. And if you read the little blue arrow, right, governmental control and planning, because you have more governmental control with communism, right, than you do with capitalism. But the psychological aspect of somebody climbing up the stairs or what?
Going somewhere.
There you go. It can be outright or subtle. Y'all seen this one? This one was on Fox News, I think. Okay, creating a flag. There's the United States. What's the second one? Russia? Great Britain? China. Kids are told to create a flag. Sounds really innocent, doesn't it? Okay. They're discussing what the symbols on the flag mean. Okay? Good lesson. Okay. But what are they supposed to do at the bottom? Notice socialist communist nations use symbolism on their flags representing various aspects of their economic system. Imagine a new socialist nation is creating a flag and you have been put in charge of creating a flag. Use symbolism to represent aspects of socialism or communism on your flag. What kind of symbolism or colors would you use? It's called role-playing. This is the one that Senator Patrick made. Wait till I read out loud. It's kind of embarrassing for him. Okay. This one is 25 days on population growth. We were just talking about zero population growth. Okay. You can look at this and read all of it. I'm curious from a scientific standpoint that part of it has to do with growing duckweed, an aquatic plant, and overcoming something. And after they do that for 2 weeks, then you have to look at cemetery stories to find out where people did whatever. 25 days on population growth in doing it. Okay. What the State Board of Education Chair Barbara Cargill brought up at the Senate committee hearing, she had a lesson on the Declaration of Independence of the U.S. Constitution. You saw that when you looked at the whole thing? Looked pretty good. Oh, great. Here comes the Declaration. Here comes the U.S. Constitution. Finally, we're getting down to some nitty-gritty. This is at the end of that lesson. So you have to do bringing it back to the Middle East and doing it. Embrace a disconnect between the lessons and the test material. That same lesson that she had, I looked at it, read it, and then there's a question on there about the Federalist Papers. Remember that test on Friday that doesn't have to do with anything on Monday? There was nothing in the lesson about the Federalist Papers. So again, you have questions on the test that do not have anything to do with the lesson that's taught. So you set the kids up for failure. What happens when you have so many kids fail their tests in the schools, then are told because teachers need more training to do it. How could all this happen and no one know about it? That's because they circumvented, divided, conquered, isolated, and gagged. They circumvented the Texas legislature, the State Board of Education, and the Commissioner of TA. They did not go onto those doors when they were setting, or when they developed this. They were allowed to develop materials. I give them credit on that. They were allowed to develop materials in the region centers. Okay, but when they took those materials they developed and then formed a nonprofit organization from a governmental agency to a nonprofit, they were supposed to go through the chain of command to do that. They did not do it. They went to lawyers. Okay. Then the educators at large, remember that workshop that I gave at that Gifted and Talented? When I called him at the last moment to do a syllabus for that, I said, oh, some teachers want something on CSCOPE, and this is the gentleman that runs the convention. He said, okay, Ms. Mack, go ahead and do that. There'll be somebody here on the other side. I said, great, they'll take one side, I'll take the other. Now, my topic was what CSCOPE does not address, okay, and doing this. When I got to that convention, they never were there at all to present their side. They don't present at anything except at their own conventions and doing that. But when I gave that presentation, what CSCOPE does not address, I had about this room filled with this many people. And I said, how many of you like CSCOPE? Well, I had a group here and a group here and a group here, about 15 out of the 100 and some on, that liked it. And I said, fine. If you like something, go for it. Passion is 9/10 of anything. Just make sure you don't hurt any children. Build on it. Do it to the best you can. And then I said, by the way, for the rest of you who do not like CSCOPE or want to see something else, let me show you what the latest brain research will say about what you can do for gifted and talented kids. So I never attacked CSCOPE whatsoever. I just told them, go for it, do it. I had those three groups of people interrupt me constantly through my whole presentation in doing it. That's the first and only presentation I have ever done in which I've never gotten complete through a PowerPoint. Because no matter what I said, if you do this for what's called 60-second homework, you can do this, or here's the results from this test, in the top 1%, they would interrupt me and say, that can't be true. And so they were basically calling me a liar without saying you're a liar, and they would interrupt me, that can't be true. And I said, well, that's the results I got by doing it, and then I'd start talking again, no, you must be wrong, Ms. Mack. And finally, I just told the audience, I said, look, we're not going to agree on anything here, so those that want material, I will email it to you, and I had to cut the whole meeting short. I walked out of the room shaking because I had never been confronted by so many people constantly interrupting me. And then I went and picked up all of the forms, because I always have forms that I put out for feedback. You know, if they want additional material, that kind of stuff, or critique things. And in those three spots right there were people from region centers and doing it. Okay. Educators at large, they promote it through TASA and TASB and the CSCOPE conventions. School board members, CSCOPE was promoted by superintendents using fair and rose-colored glasses. I went to my school board member in my little town, and I went to him and said, you voted for CSCOPE, yes? I said, can you tell me why you voted? And he said, two things. That it will address the STAR test, which is a nasty big test coming out. This will help kids. This is a guaranteed thing to help kids with that test. And also for those kids that move from school to district, it'll make sure everybody's on the same lesson at the same time and that those kids will not suffer. Well, from his expression and then on out, I found that is a common answer for almost every school board member. When I gave a presentation, I think in North Dallas, I had 3 school board members that said, we never knew what this was about. We were told by the superintendent that this would address the STAR test and address the people that are moving from district to district, but we did not know the methodology or the ideology behind it. Teachers were gagged through the user license, the user agreement. Have y'all seen that? If you want to, I'll send it to you, but that's part of the agreement between Senator Patrick and this that they're working on right now, that they will allow teachers to talk out about this now. And it's about 9 pages long. Teachers were to sign this agreement without referring to a legal person, getting input from them at all. And then in the first paragraph, you will be prosecuted criminally if you reveal this information. Then down further it says if you speak negatively about it, then you're in trouble. If you give us any of your material to substitute one of the lessons that would be better than one we have, then that's ours and not yours. So it was what? Do we have any lawyers in the room? When there's no quid pro quo, is it a valid contract? No. So actually, basically, they had to sign this under duress, and it's not a valid contract at all. But teachers are so afraid that they will not speak out, and that's what's been happening over the years. And I hear those stories over and over. I gathered letters for the commissioner and the letters for the state board chair, Barbara Cargill, through me, where they would send me the letter and say, Ms. Mack, take my name off of it. So it didn't look like I was writing all the letters. I had to take the letters, then I had to file everything and make sure that if anybody asked me, I could trace that letter back to its original thing, only with the permission of the teachers that would give me that permission. I told them I would protect them in doing so. And so all these letters were coming through, and sometimes they would say anonymous teacher on it. Then they had the 3-minute walkthroughs, and think about you doing your job, whatever you do, and then unexpected 3-minute walkthroughs with somebody with an iPad, and they are writing down everything. Actually, they're counting how many questions you ask or whatever you do. His name is Dr. Stan Hartzler, who was at the committee hearing. Met him, he quit last November. Okay. He was hired last June. He's an expert in math. For 30 years, I think it's maybe closer to 40 years, he's been an expert in math textbooks. So textbook companies hire him to evaluate their textbooks to see if everything's proper. In 30 to 40 years, he told me that he's never had once a negative write-up about himself. He's truly dedicated to children, usually more so at-risk children. He wants to make everybody successful. He even got choked up at the committee hearing in saying what he did say. And then, so he was hired in June. Then the new superintendent came in July. CSCOPE was put in place in August. And by October, so that's what, half of August, September, middle of October, within less than 2 months, he had 10 write-ups on him of doing things wrong. One of them, he told me, was because he had the wrong page listed on the blackboard. That the child that was looking at a page did not correlate with the page that was written on the blackboard. So that nitpicking micromanagement in doing it, even for him, is too much. This is one of the training things that we have. Again, they wanted to eliminate veteran teachers. Now, if I was a superintendent and my award-winning teacher is quitting, then the first thing I would do would be what? Call in my award-winning teacher. Tell me what the heck's going on here. Communicate. Find out. I mean, if they are dedicated and award-winning and they've gone out on a limb, when they're quitting left and right, would you not ask them? But in reality, that didn't seem to bother anybody. So across the state of Texas, we've had a lot of our veteran and award-winning teachers quit over this. And at the very beginning now, they understood that those teachers would give them problems. Now, I don't know about you, but in any conference that I've gone in and I'd throw out an idea, and very often I would do, so try this with your kids, and it would be my award-winning veteran teachers that before I got home that night on my email, they'd already taken my idea, tweaked it about 3 times, and have already tested it and tell me how I need to improve on it. So they would jump on anything like that. To me, that's what I experienced, not negativity or resistance in doing it. The CSCOPE petitioned the Attorney General twice not to be required to reveal content of the product, meetings, or agendas to the public. So these veteran teachers who crossed each other's paths accidentally, then one of them then petitioned, well, let's see if there's more indoctrination. Maybe that's only one or 2 examples. Maybe we are blowing this out of proportion. Maybe there's only just a few and we just hit on those few. So they wanted to see all of the lessons and were told, no, you can't do that. So the CSCOPE people hired lawyers. They petitioned the Attorney General and said, we don't want to have to turn over the lessons to the general public at large in doing that. And we also want to be declared as a non-governmental agency. A non-governmental agency doesn't have to have